Good evening and welcome to Investigator News. And it's me and William tonight. And we've got a lot of really good information on world domination. We don't talk about this too much. We tend to want to get into the nuclear threat. And uh, not many people are talking about the world domination, because once the nukes get going, it might not stop. You know, we've discussed this so many times, and not only me and the viewers, but me and William have that. Um, I just think it will just go one right after another, and nobody wants to see what we call incinerated. I think is what me and William discussed earlier, and so we don't. Nobody really wants to go there yet. That's not to say there's not a wild card out there that'll start it. But at this point, the three superpowers, China, um, Russia, and then now it's us with NATO and the European nations. Um, so that's kind of what we're going to get into tonight. A little bit with Taiwan, a little bit with Ukraine, and then a lot about what's going on in different countries that are gaining and trying to gain world domination at this point, from everything from military to land to um, military equipment to nukes to even rare earths. Um, and we have, let's see, we have Mary in the room, and she's our moderator. And if you want, please come in and hit us up in our chat, and we'll be more than likely put you up your comments and any questions you might have. So, William, how you doing tonight? I think I woke you up earlier.
I'm doing pretty good. Getting pretty excited about the show.
I am too.
Lots of new developments.
What I'm going to start with is um, we got a lot in Ukraine with the tensions going on there, but countries are just basically waiting to see. Um, we had the G7 this last week, and we'll get into a little bit of that. And what we're looking at is now the world is just waiting to see what happens. Um, I don't know if William agrees with that, but I think world leaders are all just um, they're like at the G7, they picked on Putin, they name called Jinping, and then they all went back to their countries and tried to soothe over what they had done, and now they're just waiting and watching, and um, so now really the U.S. and China tensions about Taiwan are closer, and there's rising tensions and fears and animosity. And so Anthony Blinken, and I mentioned this morning, he's going to hold talks with his Chinese counterpart, Wang Yi. And this is an upcoming G20. Now, there sure seems to be a lot of summits, and I know you guys are seeing this, but me and William talked about this earlier, how there's a lot of talking going on, and there's reasonings for this. They would rather talk. William, well, I'm going to let William point this out a little later. So the foreign ministers are coming together and they're going to talk. Now, what struck me odd was Joe Biden said he hopes to have another conversation with Jinping. Now, I had always thought and understood that they had been talking all along, but according to um, the Biden administration, they haven't talked since March. And this was due to everything going on with Ukraine. And now, over the last few months, we see that Chinese is more in support of Russia. And um, so there's a little sign that Russia is going to receive anything militarily wise from China, but China's there. Um, and now with inflation rising, and um, we're looking at lowering the tariffs on Chinese goods. I believe this is um, basically, when they were over at G7 and Biden had said a few things about Jinping, I think this is his way of getting back on the sidelines and saying, okay, now we may have said bad things, uh, but we're going to lower the tariffs, and now it's going to work out for the best for all of us, not only for China, but for the United States. Now, a lot of people don't understand that, but as we go through tonight, I think you'll understand. Um, now, this is a valuable forum that's going to happen, this G20, and we are looking at Indonesia and all of the other countries that could be involved in this um, really complex battle that's could happen. Uh, it might not. We might not see anything happen with Taiwan at all, but we might see a lot of uh, back and forth on one country deciding whether it's going to be China or whether it's going to be the United States. Now, we do have a lot of allies over there, and I might shut up for a second if William wants to say something. But I think this is what's going on as China goes, um, and Wang Yi, they're going country to country. South Korea, Philippines. They've been to Easter Island. They've been to some of the other ones to sway them to be on one of their allies. And then at the same time, we see the United States doing the same thing. Now, we have ambassadors that do this. We don't necessarily need Blinken or anybody, a general. Usually the ambassadors will talk amongst each other. So here's where we're talking once again. William, did you want to add anything before I go on to these tariffs?
Yeah, so we use ambassadors when we go from nation to nation to talk, and our ambassadors are through the State Department. They're a civilian organization, and we do all of our arrangements of trade through the State Department. Whereas other countries will send out some of their military leaders like Wang Yi and set up first military arrangements and then have civilian trade agreements. So the way we do it and the way China does it is just a little different. The Chinese use the military first and then the trade, and we use the civilian first and then trade. And then if we create a treaty, then we'll be involved militarily. So there's a little bit of difference in the way China sees the world and we see the world. China sees the world through a way of domination, and we see it through a way of trade.
Mm-hmm. Now, as we move forward towards November, and so Biden must be, I'm just kind of opinionating this, but as he looks at that, he might lose leverage in the United States, which means right now it's very important for him and his administration to set up what they would like to see move forward towards 2024. And so we could be seeing a lot of outrageous decisions. And that's what it is, like I said, kind of moving towards the world domination. Now, we've been hearing about this world order, or basically. Now, let's set that aside for a second. Now, what they're looking to is what they have to set their administration up for dealing with Taiwan at this moment, with the House and the Senate possibly being ruled by the Republicans. And so you're going to see a lot of either them being very quiet as they move forward on what's going to happen in Taiwan, or they could be very straightforward, which I doubt, or transparent, I don't see. They are going to basically start moving in order of what they want to see happen in Taiwan, rather than what they feel the Republicans are going to see. So what they did is they removed these tariffs. Now, could it be that they're just picking at Donald Trump because he put that in? I don't think so. I think there is a solution or a resolution they feel will happen if the Republicans get in office and they fully support Taiwan to where um, the Biden administration, I believe it just wants to do like it is done in Ukraine. So it's really up in the air. So moving these tariffs out, I think they really thought on this. I don't think it's something hasty. I may have sounded this morning like it was a hasty decision. To me, it is. But when you sit back and you look at it like World War III, of what will it cause for the rest of the world? Because we're talking world order or world domination. What will it mean to the rest of the world with the United States working with NATO and Europe and all of that? All of us over there in Taiwan next. Um, I believe this is a direction that they are now moving to the next war, whether it be whether it just be talk, and then we're going to go over that a little bit tonight. Me and William will, or if it's going to be blows, if it's going to go to blows. I don't see anything nuclear. I would see a ground war or a type of word war that me and William spoke about earlier. William, did you want to jump in before I end this on this portion of it?
No, I think you got that right. They believe that they can do their all sides believe they can do their domination through threats and through talk and avoid going kinetic into a war fighting situation, except for our friend Vladimir Putin, who believes that he can go kinetic and he can take territory and protect his flank in Russia. So he's the wild card right now.
Yeah. Um, so basically, what we've seen their actions being because they're going to go over and they're going to be doing talks, and the next thing would be what they have done over this last week. It's what they call the world biggest drill, or the World War III um, readiness program. Now,
Right.
um,
That's called Rim of the Pacific exercise, and that involves the United States, of course, um, Thailand, Malaysia, North Vietnam, or Vietnam, Australia, India, Japan, Philippines, New Zealand, and Canada,
mhm,
plus anybody else. That's called the Quad. Plus anybody in NATO that wants to sortie out with us in the Rim of the Pacific. So that could be one of the English or German boats that could be out there as well.
yeah. Now, see the thing when they did this, when they started doing this, China was is decided to raise the threat of another conflict. Now, this is just words, and the three East China Sea, the Taiwan Straits, and South China Sea um, is going to be what they're going to be protecting. This is very important to China. Now, they called it the three theaters because it's just a show. And that is the East China Sea, the Taiwan Straits, and South China Sea. And first, the East China Sea, it was a tense Monday for Japan. Early morning, they spotted a Chinese warship, and it was near Japan in Senkaku Islands. And this was the first time in 4 years. And I mentioned this on one of my shows this last week. And this is a major escalation. And why? Because they have not seen a Chinese ship in the area. Now, do we call it nosy? Did China just go to see what was going on? Well, they could have flown over, But no, China likes to be the aggressor. Now, that's how I feel about this. That they are going to go and they're going to show their strength, their might, and say, "We know what you guys are doing over here." And so we took it as a major escalation. And they first, the islands that we're talking about is China to stake claim to them. And Japan calls them the Senkaku Islands. And China calls them the Dai Islands. And it's a group of uninhabited islands in East China Sea. And this is long-standing dispute. So um, uh, Japan wants to say nobody's going to be there, and China's saying, well, we're fixing to go in and we're going to maybe take these islands. And so that's what this was all about. They claim that they seen we were doing drills over around there. We know they're uninhabited, and China wants to let them know that this is something they're looking at. And um, basically, um, China is becoming a very frequent transgressors, and they're not alone in doing this because now they, right as soon as they started doing this exercise, not only did they start seeing um, Chinese ships, but they started seeing Russia there also. And so now they know um, that Russia is now supporting the Chinese Navy, and meaning that Russia and China are working together for the first time. And they say this is the first time in about a month. Now, according to what I've been able to find out, they have been exercising together up around Russia, Alaska area, not farther down into Japan. Um, and so uh, this is basically what we call the Quad. Um, that all the countries that William mentioned, and so they're hosting the summit. And what we ended up seeing was Chinese and Russian fighter jets, and this is the first time that they flew near Japan. Now they did a joint patrol during the summit, and they flew their firefighters near Tokyo, within heads of four countries. Um, so, and see, I didn't realize that until I read the article today. And we never realized that they were actually going to fly together while the Quad was doing their drills. Um, and so Japan did make a statement, and it was that this was a drill they were doing. They have the right to practice. That Japan and the rest of them are getting ready to protect Taiwan. And of course, um, then all of a sudden we've seen some hypersonic missiles being used on both sides. And then also we even had a North Korea chime in on this. So we have a lot of what me and William call muscle flexing from all directions, from um, the Quad that's over there that we're doing a world, well, a practice drill. Then we've seen Russia and China doing their drills. And then in the meantime, we see North Korea just kind of chiming in on to show what they got. And this is where I seem to where I see the world domination of flexing of muscles with North Korea. North Korea saying, we're still here. We still got our missiles, we still got our rockets, and we still are willing to go after the United States. And that's the only real country that North Korea has mentioned is either going after Hawaii or hitting the United States West Coast. So this was North Korea's way of chiming in that they've got their little muscles flexing too. Um, and, um, we heard that there were 64 hours of Chinese and Russian ships that were sailing around these disputed islands. That's almost 3 days. And So this is one of the largest, I'm going to say, incursions, um, where we have all of these countries together kind of swimming around each other saying, this is what we got, this is what we got. And all of them just basically checking each other out. I think it's kind of like when you get two male dogs together and they're not sure if they want to fight or not. William, you want to add anything on this?
So the Rim of the Pacific exercise involves the whole of the Pacific. So it's not just the South China Sea and the Yellow Sea, Sea of Japan, East Japanese Sea, but it's involving everybody that's involved as far as trying to repulse the Chinese and Russians if we end up in a war over Taiwan or the Senkaku Islands of Japan or the Parcel Islands in the South China Sea. And it also, the Palawan Islands of Philippines, if that's necessary as well.
Yeah. Now, I think it's Japan they keep, what Japan is saying is they're repeating violation, and each is more grave than the previous one. I think it's just a reminder, Japan wants to remind China that it's using ships in Taiwan and deploying its airplanes. Now, I've got some numbers. Chinese warplanes entered Taiwan airspace defense zone around 380 times. I think this is what you had earlier, William. In 2021, 969
So
times.
that's the southern Taiwan islands. This is actually different, what you're talking about with the southern Japanese islands, the Senkaku Islands. They have entered Senkaku airspace 340 times in 2020, 969 times in 2021, and so far this year in 2020, 465. So they're on par to head up there towards 1,000 times as well this year over the Senkakus. That's in addition to the Taiwan Islands.
Yeah. And now we do have others that are complaining that they do not care much for. They think that China's being dangerous in what they're doing, and that's what Brunei, Malaysia, the Philippines, Taiwan, and Vietnam. And there's other contenders in the South China Sea. They feel threatened by China and their recent moves, and their major military exercises that have become very intense, they say. And not only just over these islands or Taiwan or Japan, they're now starting to see it over the top of their countries also. And because 27 countries will participate, the U.S. Navy will lead these drills. And taking part, Japan and South Korea and Australia, you read them all off. They're basically all the major regional powers. And the aim of this drill is to showcase that they have power together, and maybe this might contain China. I don't think so. I think China got their own agenda. Go ahead, William.
So how this Rim of the Pacific works is we go out like Elly says, sortie. We have an operation together so that we fight like we train, and train like we fight. And so we as a group, the Quad plus NATO, are in the Pacific Ocean practicing battle drills and orders of operations and whatnot, so that if the time comes that Russia and China will be up against a cohesive fighting unit, so we won't be throwing away any opportunities to be able to project our power. So it's not just that we're out doing freedom of navigation, which is something we'll do as well, but this is every 4 years, every 2 years, depends probably upon the threat. Our military is getting together so we can not only communicate but protect each other and bring the best equipment and personnel to bear in a fight, depending on an area and an expertise, and so that we don't waste any opportunities of defense.
Mm-hmm. Now, the other thing going over there in China is China and India again on the borders. Now, my normal viewers know I talk about this, that there is I say it's a skirmish. It's been going back and forth. They bring in all the heavy equipment and they fight and fight and fight until they run out of bullets, and then they go back. I say to their corners, or they go back. They refortify and they go back at it. Well, it calmed down for about the last 6, 7 months, and now, of course, they're back over there again. But this time, China has taken a lot of the territory away from India. So, um, so now we have China with India, and I don't think this will ever stop. I think this is an ongoing war. So, as we are now seeing, China has got one war over with India, and I don't really call it a war. I think it's more of land grabs to get that little bit more ground and a little bit more power. And then we see what's going on in China, and then we have the quad of the of our allies getting ready for Taiwan. Then we have North Korea that's still, firing their missiles. So as we're going around the world, we could start seeing that every country really has its world domination going on, even India, because it is willing, as a country that's not even close to being the size of China, is willing to hold their ground and hold their boundaries. And so then when we kind of move over to Ukraine, we're looking at the next phase. And they have taken Lungansk and have claimed that it's theirs now. They are firing upon Odessa. They are firing upon Kyiv. And so this is going to be what we heard from Biden. It'll go until Russia backs off and Ukraine wins, however long it takes, he says. And as we have seen this last week with the NATO and Finland and Norway, I believe, that Turkey inserted itself into this. And William knows a little bit more than I do with Turkey and NATO. So go ahead.
So Turkey had a problem with the Kurds. They see the Kurds as being a terrorist organization, and some Kurds took refuge in there's Finland and
Norway, I believe.
Not Norway. It's next to Norway.
Finland, Norway, Sweden.
I just hold on. Let me look that up on the map real quick. Finland and Sweden.
Sweden.
So they were not going to let Sweden and Finland into NATO based on the fact that Sweden was harboring Kurdish terrorists. And Sweden couldn't turn over the Kurds to Turkey because they'd given them asylum. And once you make an asylum claim, once it's granted, is just not something you give up people that have come for asylum. And so a deal had to be reached that Turkey could accept, because all members of NATO have to agree to allow any new members into NATO. And Turkey down low in a kind of, a not published way. They made a deal with Turkey to allow Turkey to purchase new F-16s that we've been building for export. Mm-hmm. And so Turkey was able to, save enough face and have something to show for giving in to those terrible terrorists, they believe, allowing them to stay in a NATO nation, even though they're a NATO nation. They were willing to kind of look the other way if they were going to be able to get some better defense fighters. So that was kind of a good deal for NATO. Not really great for the United States, but it worked out for Turkey and for Sweden and for Finland.
Yeah, because we're kind of looking at NATO with the EU, and this is kind of how I feel, is that they're trying to build themselves up also, because that's a part of the world that needs to not always depend on the United States, even though they do, but it's them building up their own, because we have the United States sending, I believe it's it's either Finland or Sweden. They're going to start sending them military equipment to where they could start defending themselves. And we see the same thing they're doing in Ukraine. They're giving them more and more military equipment to where they can build up their own military and defend themselves, as well as we're seeing that in Germany. We're seeing it in the EU. We see it in with NATO, bringing them all together to be a one big group, kind of like what we're seeing these groupings that's happening with NATO. And then we see the Quad, we see BRIC. Not only that, but then we've seen in our own country, we've seen just for a pipeline, that Mexico, US, and Canada. So we could see that the world is getting into small groups, and it's only to build up their own countries, militarily wise, to be able to defend itself in a way. They're always going to depend on their allies, but I believe this is a world buildup of power for each individual country. Because now we see the United States and Russia, and a lot of people really don't understand that, but there was a lot that was bought into, or the U.S. bought into, in Ukraine, which was the biolabs and the gas lines that we knew of with Burisma and Hunter Biden and the Biden family. But we're not going to go into that. I just want to show how even the United States went over there, and what was the reasoning for it. Now, it's been mentioned that if the United States can basically go in and be a huge part of Ukraine, it'll be right on the border with Russia, and which means that it won't be Russia going into Ukraine. It would be more them dealing with the United States, and it could keep Russia within their own boundaries. William, did you want to add to any of this?
Yeah, so the Luhansk region of Ukraine is now completely occupied by Russian forces. The Donetsk region is 50 to 75% occupied by Russian forces now. Ukraine is not winning this war anymore. We're kind of going into phase 3, which is where the Russian bear starts to maul its opponent. And how Russia works is, once it's been pushed back and reorganized, it figures out how its enemy is functioning. Then it goes through and destroys everything and takes one step at a time, leaving nothing left, basically everything in ruins, before they march and take the next step. And so they don't slash and cut through and do pincer movements quite the way the West does, very fast and very deep. They do shallow pincer movements, but what they tend to do is just by force of iron maul something until it gives up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they're doing now in Ukraine, and Ukraine's in trouble.
And it's like we talked about, the third or the fourth phase. They are. It seems like it got quiet again, which means they're probably restocking. Um, they received heavy armor from the United States this last week, military equipment. Oh boy. But then we heard that NATO is loading up 300,000 military boots. Um, and me and William agree that it's not going into Ukraine. It's going to stay all along the NATO line. Um,
Well,
to,
some's going towards Ukraine. We've got the HIMARS and the MERS, multiple rocket launch systems, now starting to go into Ukraine, but it's likely not going to be enough to dislodge the Russians.
mm-mm.
And both sides now have lost, in the hundreds of thousands of dead now and casualties between both sides. So um, this is now a war uh, of cannon fire. They're using the howitzers, and they're just pulverizing each other to pieces.
Mm-hmm.
It's a war of attrition. It's not quite like World War I, where they were pinned down in the trenches. They do have tanks. They have armored military armored personnel carriers. They've got howitzers. They've got mortars, so they can move forward and backwards. But the way this is working now, this is a slugfest with artillery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's slow moving and it's brutal.
And the other thing is, it's not so much that Russia wants to. I don't really think they want to take over all of Ukraine anymore, as much as it just wants those few, I call them states inside Ukraine, and but see, at the same time, what I'm seeing, and it's been happening all along, is when they do sanctions, they meaning NATO or the United States or any other country does sanctions against Russia, then Russia lashes out and goes after Odessa, or it goes after Kyiv again. And I don't know if you've noticed that, William, but it seems to be happening a lot more often, to where it's almost, you can expect it. And so
the Ukrainians and the Russians are blowing up each other's ammo dumps and places where they've set military ordnance and whatnot forward to be used by their militaries. They're destroying that on both sides. They use longer range rockets to do that because they can't reach those with just artillery. Russia also uses their aircraft, and Ukraine uses their rockets and drones to do the same thing as the Russian aircraft. So it's a give and take. Russia is about 10-1 forces over Ukraine, but Ukraine's about 10-1 in their training, their ability to hold back the Russians. So the better training of the Ukrainians is holding the Russians back, and the force of just weight of iron and explosive is what's allowing Russia to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Now, the what I heard today, the one thing that we're looking at sanctions. As far as we looked at the tariffs over in China that we were going to drop, but at the same time we're doing sanctions on Russia. And what we're really aiming at is their monetary value of gold. Russia has got one of the biggest supplies of gold, And gold, not only that, but it backs their dollars, what they call their, or what I call their dollars, and they are getting a major stockpile of gold. So what we're looking at is we have Russia with the big amount of gold. And me and William kind of talked about this. And we have now what China says is their new weapon of rare earths. They're going after all the everything like gold, diamonds, um, the lithium, the cobalt, the crystals, anything that has to do with technology. They're starting to gather up on that, as well as going country to country for their new strategic fuel, as they were saying, rare earths, and um, and so this element would make them very, very powerful in the elements if they could control it all. And then, like I said, then we got Russia with the gold, and we have the United States as petro. And what I kind of ran across William is when he mentioned petro, I said, oh, wait a minute now. What if we are um, stockpiling and putting reserves big time into our petro? So we would control the petro. Um, China would control the rare earths, and then we have Russia being the third superpower would be the gold. Um, and then what does that leave everybody else? Well, then everybody else is now has to rise up in what they're really good at. Now look at Ukraine. They have got some of the top biolabs now. I mean, they even beat China out with biolabs, or even medical labs, or test store labs is what they're calling them. And so, and I thought there was five. I hear there's close to a dozen of them. And so maybe they will be the medical sciences, the medical sciences of the world. So they would have world domination over that. Now get this: the thing with this medical thing is they are introducing I believe it was NATO and the EU and a few others into this new AI that is figured out how they could put everything, all the information into a computer to where, um, and this is what's big time going on in Europe and not only there, but Ukraine and Taiwan is another one. Um, to where if you let's say you went to the doctor and you're they would say, okay, well, you've got, let's say, cancer, and you have a certain type of cancer, and they run it all through this computer system and come up with the best medicine to put you on, the best treatment to put you on. It would have all the information cram packed into one little file to where they would treat you using like an AI system. So, and then, we have North Korea. Well, North Korea, I think they're getting ready to back up and be one of the biggest allies of nukes that anybody could possibly have. Now, what about Iran? Well, they're making them. They would be the makers of the world. So, as you could see, each country, we are now seeing the rise of. William, do you want to say anything before I move on any further into rare earths?
Yeah, we're seeing borders of the past starting to break down. Like BRICS had Brazil and India in it. That's the Russian Chinese banking system. But we're probably going to see India and Brazil break away from that. We had the old gasoline cartels or the oil cartels that had Russia and Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iran, and Iraq were all part of a cartel. And that's starting to break down where Iran's going one way and
And
So we don't have an absolute responsibility to respond to Ukraine's problem. But if it spreads to a NATO country, then we're in it all the way.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with, we don't have an absolute responsibility to go into Taiwan, although we tell them that we will. But if they go into the southern Japanese islands, we have an absolute responsibility. So we're looking at wars on both sides of the world. So that's the two major front war. And we're the ones that are backstopping Ukraine right now, while the rest of NATO, really, the European powers, it slowly dawns on them that they're not going to be able to maybe talk their way out of what Putin wants. They're going to have to stop him. And so they're trying to do military modeling now with AI, hoping to get the best odds and the best talking points to try to be able to talk this Ukrainian thing to a standstill, and as well as the Taiwan thing to a standstill by best computer predicting as to what the world military cancer is going to look like. And that way they can tell these adversary nations, now if you do this, this, and this is going to happen. If you do that, that, and that's going to happen. You don't want to do this, this is bad. And they can bring it to the United Nations, and that way they have a forum to discuss it amongst each other. But whether or not they do fight or don't fight is going to depend upon Russia and China and Iran itself, because they're the ones that are being aggressive here, and NATO's basically being not aggressive but defensive. However, the Western banking system is being predatory with Russia, and to a degree with China, and they don't want that.
Yeah, now,
so
the world banking, that's more
that economic system. The banks are really fueling this problem we're having that's quickly becoming military. So hopefully they catch up with that and decide maybe they shouldn't push the Russian bear too far. But it remains to be seen, because the bank, the city of London, which is the center of banking in the world, and then you have the center of religion in the world. There in Rome, and you have the center of military force in the world, the big fist United States. And so that's a tripolar situation, and we also have a tripolar global order that's nuclear backed, that's major nuclear backed, China, Russia, and the United States. So this is all ironing itself out with people that believe that they can dominate the world through banking and incorporation and talk, and other parts of the world believing they can dominate the world through force of arms. And that's a big contest.
Yeah. Well, I should have mentioned the UK and Europe being the big bankers. See, that's their world of domination, is the banking. And I'm hoping the viewers are kind of following along with this, so they can understand that, or they can see that there's lines being drawn again on the world of who's going to be where and what. Go ahead, William.
The city of London is not part of England.
Right.
It's an autonomous place. It's like an embassy. It's just for banks, and they run the Western banking system both in Europe and the United States, but they're not necessarily UK. Okay, That's just like the Vatican is its own territory. There's a place called the City of London that's their own territory within London proper in the UK. So we need to be sure and not say these banks are from UK. They are situated in UK, but they don't act as part of the UK government.
Right.
They are bankers of their own interest, just like the Vatican is religion of its own interest, and the Pentagon is the big fist of the interest of the United States.
And then, we were even talking a little bit on Cyprus and Italy and a few others that are, it's got to be the Cyprus, especially, one of the biggest countries that they've been caught over and over again for decades on money laundering. And then it still happens. And then still, we don't see anything ever done with it. So it's like, and when I mentioned about drawing the redrawing the lines, because we see China with dominance over Australia and Africa now, and some of the islands over around the China Sea. We see NATO grouping together its own players, where a few years back there was hardly anybody part of NATO. Now it has grown. And then we see these other groups drawing their lines. And China and Russia pretty much just grabbing, going outside their boundaries to grab a little bit more. And
we're seeing the Pacific Quad starting to merge with NATO. At the same time, we're seeing OPEC and the BRICS starting to break down a little bit and kind of congeal into more of a red pack.
And you're seeing more, William, this is what gets me, is we're starting to see more of the oil domination of Saudi, Russia, and the United States. And, we're seeing...
Nothing moves without it.
What's not to say?
Nothing moves without oil. You can't get anything out of the ground. You can't manufacture anything. You can't make steel. Everything requires either coal, oil, or gas. There's, nuclear is only like 12-15% of the electric production in the world. The rest is hydrocarbons. And without hydrocarbons, nobody moves, nobody eats. There's no way for the world to stay fed and housed and warm without it. And so that is the base of all the economies of the world.
And it's like we're now starting to see their true their true means of each nation coming forward. Like we mentioned with
nations act in their best interest, and where they can get the resources to be able to flourish, that's where they're going to get it from. And we're seeing a breakdown of the old order of OPEC and BRIC and some of the banking systems, and we're seeing a new system coming into view as we speak. This is going to take, maybe another year or so to start really shaking out. But once the Pacific Quad and NATO start to get together, that's consolidating the banking system as well. It's not going to be just force of arms, because you have to protect both your banking system to be able to do the trade you need to move the oil to the places it's got to be. So on one end you've got hydrocarbons, and the other side you've got the banking system that makes it possible to get the hydrocarbons. So both are necessary, although they both have their evils as well.
Yeah. Well, the thing, what I thought of is when I first seen the article for the rare earths, it was like, well, what would China want with just rare earths besides the gold, the diamonds, and the whatever, lithium, the cobalts, and then they gave a list, and the rare earths, if they get a hold of this on their, just for them to get it, that is aircraft and missile guidance tools, it's wind turbines, magnets, electric vehicles, rechargeable batteries, smartphones, cameras,
Communication.
earphones, speakers, light bulbs, plasma screens, CDs, DVDs, fertilizers. These are all rare earth. So you can see why China
Any
wants
electric
this.
motor now.
Yeah, that's right. Um, every scientific wonder, pretty much, China would be in control of. So you can see why they're running country to country for these rare earths. So that kind of gives you an idea of like, why would they just want to dig stuff out of the ground? What does it mean?
It
That's what
started
it
with
means.
magnets for hard drives for
Uh-huh.
our computer systems, but those magnets were so good, they've migrated out to every other system that we use because they're so light, they're so powerful, they're economical. They do things with much less power usage. In fact, when Trump was president, our hydrocarbons, United States, was the lowest it's ever been. Well, it wasn't just oil, it wasn't just gas and going away from coal. It's using those stronger magnets so that our devices can be smaller and more efficient. And so rare earths are very important as far as efficiency of an economy now.
Mm-hmm. And really, the one of the last things would be Iran. Where does Iran fit in this? Well, now Iran, they have been getting their own little allies. We know they make a lot of the nuclear um, power and weapons, and always been after
They're training
Israel.
nuclear weapons.
Yeah. And now, see, the thing about
They
this
have a
is,
huge amount of oil.
yeah, that too. That's only for, I mean, that puts them basically self efficient on that. Same way with like Kuwait and Saudi and, taking care of that portion of the world. The thing with Iran right now is it's gathering allies. And we're seeing it more and more to where they're expanding more control. Now, here just this week, and this is what I was talking with William about earlier, is they want to. This comes from a Defense Minister Gantz. Um, they are basically putting itself into the Red Sea, and they're moving warships up into the Red Sea and patrolling. Now, what's this? What does this mean? It's a way for them to control. Um, um, well, where the Red Sea is, it goes down past Babylon. It goes past um, Saudi Arabia. Me and William were trying to figure this out earlier. It goes past
Saudi
Yemen.
Arabia, Yemen, Egypt, Sudan,
There you go.
Eritrea, Ethiopia, into the Gulf of Aden, which is part of the Arabian Sea. The important point is that if they gain control of the Red Sea, they gain control of the Suez Canal. If they gain control of the South China Sea, they gain control of the Gulf of Malacca. If they gain control of more control in the Gulf of Mexico, they have the Suez Canal. And China right now is operating the Suez Canal, so it's not a maybe kind of thing either. Yeah. They're there in Panama. So they're trying to grab and get hold of the trade routes and also squeeze out competitors to them like Israel, Saudi Arabia, the EU, anybody they can that's within the Western banking system. And then who suffers is South America and also
Mexico,
Africa.
In Africa.
Yeah.
And so, so you guys can kind of see that even Iran has their own thing where they're rising up and it's really starting to show what they want to do. Um, and it's like we just mentioned, the Suez Canal, but not only that, if it takes over the Red Sea, there's a blockage of Israel getting um, its cargo and its goods out that direction. Um,
So
they can use it.
the
They can use
Western
what, the
allies
Black
don't
Sea,
block sea lanes. The Western allies do not block sea lanes,
right?
but the Red Pack will.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if EU and the United States and our other trading partners, which are the Quad and NATO, are to survive, we have to have trade amongst each other, not just for oil, but for basic necessities, because each country, like you said, has its specialties, and we've become specialist countries.
Mm-hmm.
Like Germany has automobiles they're very good at. Austria has aircraft they're very good at. Each country has its specialty, and you have like France and Belgium, they do governance. You have the United Kingdom, and they have huge land holdings throughout the world. Norway is a petrochemical giant if they want to be. Denmark holds the strait into the Baltic. Turkey holds the strait into the Black Sea. Mm-hmm. So there's all this competition now for trade routes. Now, the Red Pack knows that they go where they want, when they want, because we will allow them. We're defensive by nature. Mm-hmm. And if they're offensive, they can grab hold of different sea lanes like that. Like the English maintain a little bit of the end of Spain right there, so they can make sure that they have access to the Mediterranean and Spain, France, Italy, Greece, and the Black Sea. And so that'll be another place of contention between that and Morocco, whether Red Pack gets hold of it. So we're going to see this everywhere there is a choke point of trade.
Well, that and become an ally or part of these, what we talked earlier about, these groups getting together with the specialty of each one having a something to offer and something to put on the table. And I think that's what NATO's doing. We call them
great competitors. Like Taiwan is a specialty in very high-end chip manufacturing that even China and the United States has a hard time competing with. They're unequal to Japan. So Japan is a huge automobile. Japan and South Korea are huge automobile designers. Nobody builds a lighter, more productive automobile than Korea and Japan. So we're all choosing sides in this great power struggle, basically being brought to our doorstep by Russia and China. And then you throw in the wild cards like Iran, who has oil and wants to have a nuclear weapon and is sworn to destroy Israel. And you have North Korea, which is a starving nuclear power that just wants to be part of the Chinese
game. China Jr. Maybe even Kim Jong-un misses his dad and thinks Jinping's his dad. I'm teasing.
Well, Korea is a war that's never stopped. It's a United Nation war that's never come to an end. It just has an armistice. It can flare up at any minute.
Yeah.
Just like Ukraine.
And the thing about this, folks, if you put it all together, what we've just been through tonight, it really goes to show you that where we started, there's a lot of talking going on. Nobody right now really wants to throw the nuke in there. Nobody wants to be the first to strike. And I think because they want to redo like a world dominance of power, because that's what it's all about. Is with all these countries, who cares about the military, the money, or whatever? It's the power they want, and to see who can have more power than the other. And that's why they called, the three superpowers. It was the United States, Russia, and China. And now we're
There's
starting to see others
three
rise.
trains of thought. You've
Hmm.
got the Christian West, and embedded within the Christian West, a religion that's based on power only. It's amoral. It cares nothing about anything else but power, and it projects itself through banking and incorporation. Then you have, of course, the Christian world, and you have the Muslim world. China is destroying the Buddhist world, and
Hmm.
India has its own panoply of gods as well as Buddhism. So you've got banking systems, military organizations, and religious systems all sorting themselves out simultaneously.
Yeah. And Linda G says real leadership comes with the empowerment of others. That's right. And that's kind of what we're getting at tonight. Um, and if you're coming in late, you might have to re-listen of how everyone um, I say kind of refortifying their countries. We're seeing the biggest of the biggest. And you have to add Iran and North Korea into this. And even um, Britain and UK, because they have rose uh, to dominance. And I think it's really starting to leave the EU and Germany and a few of those behind. And I think that's where NATO has swooped in and making it a rise. Instead of now, when we have the UN, it separates us all out, in all the different countries, and they all sit around in this big group. Um, that's the way the world used to be. I think now we're allying together to be able to strengthen one another for the new world, the new world order. Um, and
The
I
United Nations was initially designed to be a peacekeeping organization to keep the peace in the world. What they've
Mhm.
devolved into is a organization that has decided what the borders are within the world, and when one country crosses a border into another, that's about all they exist for. That, and if there's a plague, something like that, that
Mhm.
requires medical attention cross borders. Then
Mhm.
you have these other military organizations, you have the religious organizations, and you have the natural assets that these land masses have, whether it's water, petrochemicals, chemicals, ores, things that they can bring to the table. And then within each one of these countries, you have different orthodoxies within the leadership and different orthodoxies within the peasantry, if we'll call it, the regular people. So you might have regular people at the bottom, you might have people at the top that only believe in power. These are all things that are being sorted out not only
Mhm.
globally, but within each nation as well.
Yes.
This is all happening simultaneously.
Yeah. And the thing is, um, it, this whole one world order, I think that it did fall apart. I think, the only reason why I think it did is who would lead it, and that's the question Jinping put to the World Economic Forum: is who's going to be the king of the world? And of course, they were like trying to have him feel good and say, "Well, it could be you." Okay, now, how many of these other countries is going to want Jinping as a world leader? Not many. Okay, what about Joe Biden? I'm pretty sure that no, that ain't going to happen. Okay, what about
Just
Putin?
like Ukraine has forced the military organizations to decide where they're going to stand, Jinping has
Hmm.
forced all the global dominance folks out into the open for everyone to see in each country. And all of these people are at the same time trying to decide what is most important to them: world dominance, protection of their country, or protection of their world group. And we don't know what that's going to end up being yet. We don't know how that's going to all sort out, because there are different levels of power within society. Plus, if you add the incorporations and the very, very wealthy, like the Gateses, the Astors, whoever they are throughout the world. We've had numerous names come through, Bezos,
Rothschilds.
These people are all making these decisions as well. And how this is all going to sort out, plus you have the will of the people being pushed up from the bottom, you have the domination being pushed down from the top, and you have a military squeeze happening at the same time, and a Jinping saying, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and y'all better stay out of the way. It's forcing everything out into the open.
It sure is. And so as we wrap up for the night, boy, that was a quick hour. I just want to say that there could be that wild card that's going to shoot a nuclear weapon off. But I think we're now seeing that these leaders are smart enough to know that not to push back, to see, wait a minute, let's see what's going on before we start making a hasty decision. And this is I have to give credit to the last 2 years, not to Biden, but to the world leaders, because they are talking, they are getting together, they're trying to feel each other out to find out what they need to do to protect themselves and who they need to ally with. And they're finding, just like us, there's family members that we thought were loyal, and they walked away from us. We've got friends and co-workers, neighbors that have all done the same thing. And I think this is what's going on with these G summits and Davos and a few others, where they're trying to see who's going to help me, who's got my back. Now that things are getting really scary, let's see who's got my back now. And I think it's a reevaluating the world in itself, not that it's one world order. I think that has fallen apart. I think it's a world domination, like what we named the show after, of who getting our world the best it can be, to protect itself, and what allies we're going to have to strengthen us.
People acting in their own best interest and allying themselves in whatever union of safety they believe is in their best interest, and that's what we're seeing unfold.
Yeah. Do you have anything you want to throw in there last, William? I think I threw everything in there except for the kitchen sink.
I think we did.
And some of my biscuits and gravy I made earlier.
Oh yeah, we saw a shooting at the 4th of July, a terrible thing, which I want to denounce. But I did some research early on that before things got pulled down, and it appears that young man that did the shooting also had ties to the old world, where his ancestors came from, and he was considered to be part of a far-right organization, which in Europe means basically a Nazi-type, Antifa-type organization. And his ancestry is out of Romania, Hungary, Bulgaria area. If you look if you look at his picture and the old picture of Vlad the Impaler, they look an awful lot the same. So, but it's not just people where they live now, it's where their families come from that they're looking towards as well, because that's where their cultures come from, and that's where their meaning comes from. So all these things are sorting themselves out. We're going to see all kinds of aberrations.
Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot more crime than we really want to see. Um, but I think as
It's
we're,
not a simple gun control issue. That's what I'm saying is
yeah,
you have to look at things in their totality. We can't look at things in simple by simple means anymore. We are a very complex world. Everybody affects everybody, and we need to look at it all the way down to the bottom, or we're going to be left behind or get run over.
hmm and we're going to need a much stronger administration. And I think even what they say, um, I thought it was 20 they were saying on the news, but when I talked to my sources at the Capitol, they said, no, I don't think you understand, Ellie. There's more like 50. There, and this is all over Democrat moderates, um, from senators to congressmen to staff members to friends and family members of the Democrats that are now starting to turn against them. And
And
so,
we got Republicans that are part of the Green New Deal religion
mhm,
as well, the
yeah,
religion of power.
yep,
Don't think that we don't. Uh, we just had John Cornyn put out a bill. He's a Republican, strong Republican for CRT. We never know where it's going to come from, and we have to pay attention.
yeah, yeah, we do. And we got like, look at Chinny. She's, oh, I'm gonna stay a Democrat, or in no, I'm gonna stay a Republican, but I want the Democrats to vote for me. Right there, she's telling the world that she's both. She's both. There's if she wants to
She's
be
saying
both.
that she wants the old order the way it used to be. The problem is it's changing.
Hmm
It's leaving her behind as we speak, and she can't see it because she's just looking at simple parts. She's not looking at the big global panoply, and now she's out of step. Same thing we're watching with Romney.
hmm Well, that and she's trying to cover for past mistakes of her dad, I believe.
And
And
we also have Democrats that are standing up for our civil rights and blocking some of the Green New Deal stuff in the Democratic Party. We're
hmm
seeing it on both sides. We're going to see who's who pretty quick, and they're
hmm
not going to be able to hide much longer.
Oh no, no, it's just like Mitch McConnell. I mean, he's on his way out, I believe, and so is Graham, because when you play the flip flop game back and forth, right now the American people they want the truth. They want the truth now, and they're not going to tolerate no more lies. They've heard enough. They've heard enough lies, and it's to the point where you know what, I can handle the truth. Just be honest, and that's what's coming out is the transparency to where everybody can see all the cards on the table, and now it's time to make some tough choices, and even um, globally for us to make choices. Um,
What's
well,
nice
Will,
about this program is you guys are getting a PhD in uh, global political economic dynamics that most college graduates coming out of Harvard aren't getting because they're just getting legal degrees.
mhm,
You're being able to see the world for what it is rather than for what they want you to believe it is.
mhm.
And
So,
you get to see it not by their words but by their actions. And it talks about that even in the Bible. By your actions you know them.
mhm. um, So that is it for tonight. And I think this was a really good show. And I think this is one you should share. So many people are so stinking worried about these nukes. And if you just look at it as a whole and calmly, I know we just get all worked up and frazzled and worried about what's going to happen next, that we don't sit down and just think about it. And that's kind of the way me and William have tossed us back and forth. Of let's calm, think about it. Let's come up and see who's doing what in the world. And as we could see, it's just about world domination at this point, um, for each country to look in within itself and bring out its own inner strengths at this point. because nobody
It
wants to
makes
be.
no sense to dominate an Earth and then destroy their own domination in the Earth at the same time.
Yeah, very true.
That would just be grabbing at smoke. So the major powers have no real reason to toss any heavies, but somebody's going to toss one errantly, and we need to understand that there are all kinds of groups within this world with all different types of IQs, and how they function under pressure we're likely to see, but it doesn't mean that the world's going to come to an end unless the three major powers toss them.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, William, I thank you much. And we thank everybody for watching tonight. And please share and subscribe, definitely. But please share the show. It might, there might be one person in your life that that really needs this for them not to be so scared, to maybe look at it in a whole new light of things and decide what they want to do.
We can pray for our leaders and for our friends and our family
and our enemies
to finally hopefully see the light and understand what's happening so they can make wise choices.
So, okay, well, over there in Facebook, hit the follow and the like and subscribe and hit the bell over here in YouTube. So with that, folks, tomorrow morning we will have news in the morning, and that'll be our next show. And of course, William, always come back next week, and we'll find something to dabble into with the a World War III report, because this is World War III.
Ukraine won't go away until before next week, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure. Neither will Taiwan or China. And I'm pretty sure Iran does not plan on stopping what they're doing. So, of course, we'll have something for you. So with that, folks, have a wonderful Wednesday night. And God bless. And, say a prayer for these world leaders, that they make the right choices. So with that, we will see you tomorrow morning. And thank you much, William, for being here tonight. And
it's a fine opportunity. Thank you.
All right. And we will see everyone tomorrow. And have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye, folks.